Hello everyone, HDR is a high dynamic range, or the range the camera can see from the darkest to the brightest point without clipping any information. It is of course greater than the standard dynamic range. Because the footage needs to have a higher dynamic range and capture more information, HDR footage needs to be recorded in at least 10-bit color depth. 10-bit simply means that each red, green and blue pixel can hold 2 to the power of 10 of information, unlike the standard SDR 8-bit image which holds 4 times less information. Because of this, HDR TV standards like HDR10, HDR10 Plus and Dolby Vision use wider Rec 2020 color space and 10-bit image depth. Alright, you're up to speed. So a proper HDR image needs to be recorded in at least 10-bit color depth in order for it to be properly displayed on HDR screens, or should I say, in order for it to be actually HDR. But Osmo Action's HDR footage is only 8-bit. What's even worse is regular video in Cinelike-D, which is also 8-bit, seems to have more dynamic range than the HDR one. Let me show you in DaVinci Resolve, a professional color grading software. I have 2 clips. One is in HDR and the other is standard video mode with Cinelike-D color profile. First off, we can clearly see that both shots are 8-bit. We can think, okay, maybe DJI is calling it HDR for users who are not buying this camera for some sort of professional work, but are only accustomed to using HDR mode in their phone camera app, and I actually think this just might be the case here. You see, when we go to analyze the color information, we can clearly see that both shots look pretty similar on the waveform. We can see that the sun is overexposed exactly the same in both shots. In both shots, the color information in the sun is clipping and cannot be brought back down in color grading. As for the shadow information, I'd say there's actually a bit more information in the non-HDR shot. As far as the waveform is concerned, things look pretty similar, but when I leave the shadows, I'd personally say there's a bit more detail in the regular shot. It seems like the HDR mode simply leaves the shadows to be more in the midtones range, but while it does that, it crushes some lower brightness values which the Cinelike-D version keeps. Nevertheless, the baked-in saturation is already enough for me to skip the HDR mode. We can easily replicate the HDR effect in Resolve on the standard footage and still have more information to work with. That's why I'm giving away a free LUT to convert normal Cinelike-D footage to a more HDR-like shot. Download in the description and learn how to use it in the video in the corner. Back to the unedited shots, if we compare this to the Panasonic GH5, which has a 10-bit recording option and even offers to shoot straight into hybrid log gamma for easy HDR plug and play, we can clearly see what should be HDR and what is only trying to achieve the look. Much more color information in both the highlights and the shadows. Alright, so what does HDR mode actually do? Honestly, I'd say that it's just a marketing gimmick for those who are buying this camera just to post their travel video clips on Facebook. There's really no benefit to HDR mode, and you're better off shooting regular video mode with Cinelike-D if you're interested in color grading your shots later on. The whole HDR image looks just like it took a regular image and lifted the shadows to get that fake HDR look you see some smartphones automatically produce. Again, it's probably for casual enthusiasts and not for those of us who want to work on the footage later in post-processing. So there it is, that's the HDR mode on the Osmo Action. Comment your thoughts down below. Is this a deal breaker for you? Honestly, I wasn't expecting this small of a sensor to have true 10-bit HDR, so I can't say I'm disappointed. Ever since the camera came out, I noticed there were no technical specs about the HDR mode, so I'm not that surprised about this. Remember, this is the same sensor like in the Osmo Pocket, and the Osmo Pocket doesn't have HDR. Nevertheless, this little guy still has a lot to offer. If you're interested in more videos like this, remember to smash subscribe and destroy that like button. Thanks for watching and goodbye.